Welcome to Low Code Campfire, episode number 57 for Friday, July 1st. Today we're going to continue, at least for a few minutes, the discussion about digital signatures. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Dale Warner. I'm head of support for Plantin'. This is an event we do every Friday, 10 a.m. Central Time. This hour we get together and talk about the challenges and techniques and experiences that you're having using low code and Plantin'. And this is an all skill levels welcome event. We record these events, and all the past editions are out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Plantin'. You can get to that either directly or using that QR code, or that link is also in the emails that we send to you. But we have 56 hours of content, and those are all bookmarked. Patrick is working away in the background to make sure that everything is bookmarked and is easy to get to if you want to research something we've talked about in the past. We run a pretty simple and informal agenda. We say hello, we'll go around the campfire. Typically we do first call, just whatever's on your mind. We take a look at our common Campfire website, consider some feature requests, any topics that you've submitted in advance. And then after an hour or so, whenever the conversation winds down, we'll switch to our Afterglow segment, which is just where we turn off the recording. And I'm talking away and I haven't shared my screen, so thank you for that. Where we do our Afterglow segment and just kick back, talk about any of the other topics that were on your mind. And sometimes we take a look at a humorous t-shirt or two if you have one. So just enjoy us for a good chat there. But you can engage with us. This is a meeting format, and the idea is jump in, engage, be part of it. Be part of the discussion. The only guidelines that we have is be nice, and if you've got noise going on behind you, mute yourself. You can submit questions and topics in advance. There's the link for that, and that's also in the emails that we send to you. And with that, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. How are you guys doing today?
Morning.
Hey.
Hello.
So I'm going to go a little bit out of order today. We won't do first call first. I wanted to take a minute and on Wednesday, Razvan from our office, senior developer from our office, has done, on Wednesday, he did a presentation about digitally signing a PDF and showing some of the code that he had behind it, talking about the techniques that were employed to put it together. And if any of you who attended that, or any of you that didn't, have any questions about how that went together, if you we just invited him to come and to be part of that. It's the tail end of his day, so we're going to move it up first and just open the discussion. Any questions that you might have for Razvan. So Razvan, first of all, hello, and thanks for putting that together on Wednesday. I thought it was a very good presentation.
Hello, thank you. I hope it was clear, and I hope it was valuable, at least for some people.
Well, I think it was. Anyone have anything that they would like to ask Razvan or comment on that opportunity?
Oh, sorry, where are we? I suppose it's thinking about the general approach, the wider question, or the wider approach, which you touched on towards the end of the session. So we've had a couple of the Wednesday presentations which have been talking about building custom actions that fit within Plantin'. And in the past, I've built some DNN modules using starter projects and that sort of thing. Is if I was wanting to get started writing my own custom actions, what's the starting point? You know, I fire up Visual Studio, and then what's the best way to get started?
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to say that, as I mentioned even in the presentation, I'm quite new to the team, and it was actually my first project. I was more focused on the application that got installed locally, rather than the custom actions. I think the best approach, I don't know if you have actually access to the code. Dale, do they have access to the code? Do you know?
No, but there is some documentation. Let me take a first whack at that question. Most of our clients don't have access to the full code of the application, but we have published some starter apps, or rather some starter code, and some information on how to get started. And I will find that and make sure that that's put out at least to this group here. But we've also done some various events, I would say in Low Code Cafe, where we've talked about how these kinds of things can be extended. In broad scope terms, you end up writing a .NET application that gets installed to the local to the website. Also, a configuration file that describes your custom action so that it can have setup parameters, and then Plant an App will call your custom action at the appropriate time. I'm going to ask David Osborne, who's done this most recently, to do that. Maybe you can even provide more clarity on how the steps necessary to do that. I'll take a minute to try and find the documentation piece that I was talking about.
Yeah, it's actually really easy. I've done a lot of them, probably too many of them. And you're just firing up Visual Studio, and you go ahead and create like a class library project in Visual Studio. You can do it either in C# or VB. And there's two main components that you need. And I know I did Campfire on the if-else action that I wrote. It's been months ago now, maybe 6 months or maybe longer than that. But that's out there. And I've got a YouTube video that I haven't posted yet that shows me walking through how to do another one. But you create a class that inherits from the interface. Let's see, iAction implementation, IMPL. So you're implementing an interface which has two functions in it. And if you want me to share my screen, I could definitely walk through if someone cares that much about it. But you're implementing really only one function, which is execute, which is your code that gets a copy of the context and processes that. And then you're implementing a JSON config file, which is basically telling Plant an App on the admin side, like what fields they should have, because the fields will map to your properties that are in your class. So if you've got like I've built one that's a string replace action, right? And so you pop in the string, your source string, and the values you're looking for and what you want to replace. And it just populates that stuff into your parameters, under your properties on your class. And then you've got access to that and the various data contexts. And you can do all sorts of things. I've got ones that are calling out to different JSON endpoints out on the internet to pull down data. And I've made modifications for some item data sources that can pull down data in a drop-down list on the admin side. So like we've got lists of projects that you can select from when you're configuring anything on the admin side. We touched base on that webinar we did a few weeks ago on low code stuff. That we talked about that and showed that stuff a little bit. Sorry, I'm blabbing on and on. I talk about it forever.
You're doing great, and I appreciate that. We I've posted the starting point, one of the starting points for this, on the chat. This our dnnsharp.com actions extensibility. So you can take a look at that. That'd get you started. And so now we've run a little interference for you, Razvan. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or?
No. I just wanted to say that David is right. You need to implement that interface action implement. I think it's called, and then you have like the config file. At least that's what I remember. But again, in order to clarify the part that relates to plant and app, like the action and the controller, or the actions and the controller were created by Robert, which is our CTO. Yeah, so he helped out on that part.
Yep.
I actually built the application that runs locally on the client's laptop if you want, and does the signature.
And I guess one more thing to point out is deployment of it's really easy too. I mean, you take the DLL that you get compiled from Visual Studio and you drop that into your bin folder of your website. You take that JSON file and you drop it into a specific actions config folder. And as long as you've written your JSON file right, it shows up in your dropdown in Plant and App, and it is just as equal. It's a full-fledged citizen action of everything. I mean, Plant and App's done an amazing job. I keep raving about it. It sounds like a sales pitch, but I get in the code and I'm like, this is exactly how I would have built it if I was building a system. They did a really good job, and they made it really easy to plug stuff in. And I have dug way too deep into how to implement different features in the system.
So, David, I was just curious, did you happen to get a chance to listen to Wednesday's, either the live or the recording?
I didn't. I was out on Wednesday, so I haven't gotten to, but I feel like we touched on this. Like, it sort of sounds familiar. Dale, did you touch on this briefly maybe a few months ago? There was some digital signing stuff you barely touched on during a campfire.
It was different, but I mean, even without getting into exactly what we presented, just one of the concepts was that Razvan developed a application that's running that gets installed on the local computer, so and that it's interacting with the browser. So the idea is that some processing, for whatever reason, gets offloaded to the local system instead of being part of the website. In his case, he developed something that is responding to some, what do you call it, a .NET Core local web application. Was that correct?
Yeah, so essentially it's just a .NET Core web application that runs locally. And so it started as a scheduled task when the user logs in. It starts up, it runs in the background, and you can make calls to localhost on a specific port. And you can make like get requests, post requests, and so forth. Yeah. So what that does essentially then is, you open up the Plant and App application in a browser, and you can have like JavaScript that runs in the browser on the local application on the client and makes calls to localhost your port, and it gets an answer from that, and it communicates back to the Plant and App. In our case, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so in kind of big scope, if there's something that needs to run locally for some reason, in this case, it was a security context. It was trying to access a thumb drive that has the signature and does the signature. But you could have anything that was whether it was a proprietary system that runs locally, so long as it can provide an answer, you could offload processing from the website, provide it whatever inputs that it needs through that local host call, get answers back, and then consume them back on the website. So it's kind of an interesting use case. I don't know that I just bring that up. I kind of thought that from a full code developer standpoint, it's just an interesting pattern that you might be interested in.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that, because I was just thinking the other day, once you are able to write these actions, that's what Plant and App gives you the ability. I sound like a sales pitch again, but Plant and App gives you the ability to do whatever you want, and that's what makes me most comfortable as a developer, is knowing that no matter what, I can do whatever I want. And the other day I was like, what's the most absurd thing that I could use Plant and App to do that maybe it wouldn't be necessarily needed for? But I'm like, because you can do anything. I was trying to think of what, AI type algorithms I could run under the hood using one of those actions, because I can just do whatever I want with code.
Mm-hmm. Good. So Jim, I think that you were did that answer your question? Did it help?
Oh, absolutely. I really should have. I really should go back and watch the stuff that David's book has provided, because that does sound very interesting. Going back to the .NET app that the local locally running .NET web API that you're running, were you able to build just one and it worked on Mac, Windows, Linux, or did you have to wrestle with that a bit?
Yeah, so no, I got it to deploy on Windows and Mac. Yeah, so I haven't tried it on Linux because plainly there was no requirement at the moment to run it on Linux, and also I didn't have access to Linux. Maybe I can, probably can install it quite easily and so forth, but it just, there is always a question of priorities and so forth. But essentially, I've built this using .NET Core, and I haven't seen any issues with it. Yeah, so there are quite frankly more issues with packaging the application as a Windows installer and as a Mac OS package, rather than, you can just run a .NET command and it packages everything into one file, for example, and you don't even need .NET framework installed. Yeah, obviously the size increases. So in our case is about, I think is about 80 megabytes or whatever uncompressed. Yeah, but you can just copy that and you can just run it, on different machines, and it will just run. Obviously now it depends on if you start using libraries, that are outside of the .NET Core. You would need to make sure that they run on that specific system, or even inside the .NET Core, some of more complex functionality. There might be some tricky parts, some classes that they haven't migrated fully. But that's kind of like, I don't know, stuff relating to cryptography or setting the PIN or even things like that, yeah. But generally, if you just want to say A plus B or whatever, or even use some basic classes, then that's fine. So for most of it is, as long as you don't use UI, that's fine. If you want to use UI, then it gets a little bit trickier, and then my suggestion would be for maximal compatibility, just use HTML and JavaScript to communicate with the application.
That's really helpful. I suppose in the past it was always difficult doing things in across platform, and the promise was always you just build one thing, package it up, and it'll run everywhere. So it's nice to actually hear it being done, especially when you're dealing accessing devices like USB.
Yeah, so just to mention this, so just to clarify this, I built this application using .NET Core. Yeah, so Planton app runs on .NET Framework. This was built using .NET Core. Obviously, it doesn't really matter because you just get post requests to the application, so you can you could potentially build it using anything, and you can call it using any program written in any kind of like programming language. Yeah. So that's kind of like why we went down this route, because it offers us this flexibility where you can potentially install this on every type of like operating system, like as you mentioned, Windows, Mac OS, Linux and stuff like that, and it will run. In particular, in this case, I must say that we've used some classes that at least one of the methods of signing the document will not work on Mac, most likely. We'll need to check. We'll need to do some more thorough testing. But again, this is a particular class that we're using for a particular scope, and Microsoft hasn't like fully offered support for it on necessarily all the systems. Yeah, so there you will find certain classes that are not going to work on some operating systems. Yeah, but they tend to be quite specialized for whatever reason. I mean, in this particular case, for example, cryptography actually, I think the operating system actually does the operations, a lot of them at least. Yeah. And part of them are done on the stick, but there is some communication that happens with the underlying operating system. Yeah.
So I see that Jim Anthony has posted on the chat that he's using this same kind of local processing model to print labels to a network printer, and he's doing that through PowerShell. So that's an interesting use case as well. Jim, did you want to comment on that, or that's as far as you got? All right, we'll call him out. Cool. Any other questions for Razvan? It's late on his Friday afternoon, but if not, then we'll thank you for doing that and for coming today and just kind of adding to our discussion. You're welcome to hang or drop off as you need to. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
So with that, we'll drop into what is now, I guess, second call. Anybody with something new or important or need a hand with? Don't be shy. All right, I've messed with the pattern, and so first call is gone. We'll go to something else. Does anybody know this one?
Sí, pero no quiero.
All right, David's worked his way through it. Is there anybody else on the call that speaks Spanish? Okay, we have a project coming up, and
All right, that would be a C from me too. I didn't realize I was muted.
You do? Do you speak it? Do you speak it well?
Yeah, well, my family's originally from Puerto Rico.
I see. Okay. Well,
I'm bilingual.
well, welcome. No, we've got a project coming up that requires us that may well involve us teaching Plantain App to Spanish only speakers, and so we're looking for options to make that happen. So I don't know, had Bogdan mentioned that at all to you, Ben? Maybe he didn't know. All right, well, so I have accomplished what I needed to here. I have a name, and I'm submitting it. You may or may not want it.
I should have kept my mouth shut.
Well, I'm pretty sure it would be a paid gig, Ben. So now it comes down to whether or not you have time, right? But so I'm going to move on to Campfire. For those that don't know, we have a website that we use within this group where we put low code things that we've developed in low code that might be useful to others. So a lot of little things that are out here. So first of all, I see that there are no new contributions since last week. Anybody who's on the call that is not part of this and wants to be, just shoot me your email on the chat or to my email address, and I'll be happy to get you added. This is you get to be a full low code engineer on here, so you can get to look at the way that these solutions have been implemented. So I'm going to comment a couple of things on this, even though we don't have something new. One is that this site has recently been updated to our new version 1.21 as part of our internal live quality assurance testing. And I went through this yesterday after upgrading it, took a look at all the contributions, and just made sure that they continue to work without issue after the change. So these also end up now being part of our testing process. So when you put something in place here, we will test to make sure it continues to work from version to version. With that, there was a contribution by Jerry Maddox some weeks ago. I see Jerry doesn't happen to be with us today. The contribution, let's see if I can find it here. Jerry had something called maps. If you didn't see it, this was a great presentation. I think it was in Low Code Cafe. You could search for it on the YouTube channel. But it had a nice thing where you could pick a sales rep, and it would map all of their contacts, their customers, and show that on a nice map. And we're seeing this is working. I've got it turned on to show the latitude, longitude, customer name, that kind of thing. You can see the JSON output, but it's not outputting a map. I went back and took a look at this yesterday, and I think this was reported, I think, in a Campfire maybe a week or so ago. So I finally found a few minutes to take a look at this, and it was working in our version 119. It got broken in our version 120, and we didn't detect it. So just confirming that we know about it, and now it's been submitted to development. And but it's a very cool technique. Someone jumping in there. Okay, so that's Campfire, and Albert, I see your request, so we'll get you added there when sometime after this meeting. The next one is feature requests, and this one was, let's see if I can get this dropped on here. So there's a feature request segment on our community portal. It's for feature requests. You can ask us for anything. Doesn't mean you'll get it, but what we like to do is if you'll submit them, and then from time to time we go through, and you can vote anytime, but sometimes we let people on this call lobby for, hey, wouldn't this be a great feature? And sometimes you get more votes than just yours. But there was one that came in this last week, and so this is one of those that I can kind of say yes to. We have a confusion when you're working with a listing and you start typing search characters, and as soon as you start typing characters in the search, it goes off and tries to find those records and display them in the listing. When the listing gets large and a lot of records, and so performance starts to come in, you start typing and that search bar disappears. Well, and I see Ben agreed with this request. I don't know if you saw it, Ben, but actually under Bootstrap 5, it does work well. It no longer disappears. And so this is already kind of a wish granted thing. Let me see if that'll load up while we're talking. So as you're searching for things, it will, you can continue to type even while it's searching. So if you really need this feature, switch over to Bootstrap 5. We don't, as a policy, we're not making enhancements anymore to Bootstrap 3, so you probably won't see it implemented there, but it will be in Bootstrap. It'll continue to be in Bootstrap 5. So Ben made the suggestion about live filtering versus manual filtering, waiting for you to actually click something once you've actually completed your search setup. And so, Ben, I was just going to ask you, given that it doesn't disappear anymore in the Bootstrap 5, do you think it would be worth having this live versus manual, or does that kind of make it unnecessary?
I would say for those that are on Bootstrap 5, they would not need it. And I know you're saying that, you're not planning on making any feature updates or whatnot to Bootstrap 3. However, that being said, for those that maybe haven't had the ability to upgrade yet for whatever reason, incompatibilities, maybe they may have other modules that are installed on their systems that they can't upgrade to 5 just yet, having the ability to have a feature where you could flip the live and manual type of search would be helpful for them, because if they can't go to Bootstrap 5, they won't get it, and they'll still get that strange, you start typing and the whole entire thing goes gray. It's just, nice little thing to have. I mean, there may be some people too, on a flip side, that maybe don't want the filtering to start working immediately. Because as you type, it's constantly sending every new keystroke, it's sending in a new filter, a new filter, a new filter. By setting it to manual, you're basically saying, all right, type what you want, then hit the button and do the search once.
Yep. So,
So
it could even be a
in that
performance thing.
exactly. So from both perspectives, for those that can't move to Bootstrap 5, and also for those that are looking for more of a performance boost, I think that that idea is useful.
So from a, and I'm going to go back to your original apply filter button. I was just wondering what the user interface would, this is the next question. If we were to go down this path and the product team thought this was a good idea to add, it would be, okay, now we've got to design what this looks like. So it'd almost be, you've suggested an apply filter. I'm thinking that might be a apply search, since it's in the search. Or are you thinking just generally filters, get all your filters in before you? I mean, right now, our filter.
I mean, I was thinking basically, hold on, let me just, I'm pulling up a form now, that a grid rather, so I can like visually see. But I was thinking just strictly for that search box, not specifically for the filter items or anything like that. So basically where you have that search box and you have that little icon of a magnifying glass.
Mm-hmm.
So like right next to that text box that appears, to the right of it, if you have manual search mode activated, you'd see a button there that it could just simply say apply.
Mm-hmm.
What another thought that I just want to put out there, I don't know if this helps or not, but is everyone aware of the search delay setting? Because I think in some cases that can help with this UI. So like for instance, one of the suggestions here was, allow the user to type 3 characters. If you increase the search delay, it does give a little bit more time for the user to do some additional typing before the search actually starts.
I could see that helping for some people, but I could also see that causing even more confusion, because if you put the delay too long, someone could type in 3 letters that say you have a 5-second delay, and they're like, what's going on? Nothing's oh, there it is. Like, why is there a, they'll be wondering, why is there a delay?
Yeah, definitely. If it's too long, I think that would be, but it's milliseconds. The setting is in milliseconds. So, and it's defaults to the 300 that you see there. But that can be adjusted.
Yeah,
so
like I said, that could, I mean, I could just see that tripping people up if the person who's setting this up sets it up to be too long.
Right.
Some people might get a little confused as well from that perspective. But I mean, it definitely offers another option, but still could potentially cause some confusion, I think.
I think the search delay solves a different problem. That helps with the performance issue, where you've got someone who's pounding the keyboard and it's sending this stream of filters through. But I think making it very clear that you have to press, either click the icon or press enter when you've finished with your search request. Where you've got very large data sets, and where it's, especially when it's very large, it can take a while to load anyway. So letting people complete their query and then press enter or click the button would be helpful. The other thing that would be quite handy is be able to have control over the minimum number of characters they have to type before it starts searching. So if you know that people are going to need to type 5, 10, whatever characters before it starts to search, that would be useful, rather than it always being 3. Got a situation where the codes were all the codes people would search on are 5 characters long. So there's no point in searching after 3.
Yep. That would make sense if you're searching for an ID, it's 4 characters or more. A partial search doesn't do you much good in that scenario. So being able to design that as I think we would probably support that. Another possibility is, without the raw search, but with a filtering form, you can get wherever you want to go. But just for anybody who's listening and needs to do it now. But those are both good suggestions. I see that there's a search. We have this icon to the right. I wonder if there's something that we could do there. I mean, an apply button would make sense, but some form of a click on that. What do you think about enter?
Personally, think an enter would work fine.
I would expect it to work.
I mean, most people, I think, would understand enter.
You mean?
I think it's rare that you'd find that as you're typing, things filter. Usually, at least that I've ever seen, is you type what your criteria is, and when you hit enter, that's when it gets triggered.
Mhm.
Would enter work with a mouse click? Like you'd be clicking in the box, you'd be typing. If you're on a phone, how would you implement the enter?
You need to have
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to have a button.
Yeah, I think a button with enter activating the button is
Right,
yeah.
exactly. With enter being the default,
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
absolutely. But you're right. For mobile devices, you would need both. You can't just forego the button for the enter.
Which is what the site search, that's the behavior of the site search. Of course, that's redirecting to another page, so that's a slightly different scenario, but that's what it does. With the site search there, you can type your search, and you can either click the search icon or hit enter. Both of those work.
Yeah, there's an enter there.
Yeah, Dale, you mentioned a person could set up a form to do this sort of thing. I've done that several times. Yep.
So, yeah, well, thanks for helping me think through that. When I'll take a look at, we'll bring that to the product team for discussion. It sounds like might be something that's a small enhancement that would help people, but even in the Bootstrap 5 world. So sounds like probably a pretty simple thing. And then you mentioned for performance too. This particular test that I have going on, and I've mentioned this before on the Low Code Cafe, but there is you can do when you're building a listing using SQL, you can use advanced SQL or SQL Select. Sometimes the syntax requires advanced SQL. It's not just a simple SQL Select. And just point out that advanced SQL one is slower than SQL Select. There's performance things that we build into it. And when you have just a very large number of records, in this case, I paid 800,000 records, this search can take a while, and sometimes visually it appears that it's done before it's actually done. So that's another thing I've reported as a bug for us to address. That the bar here when we go to like 99.45, this visual bar that goes on can stop before it actually renders the correct results. You can see it's still rendering the intermediate results along the way. And this kind of thing would also be fixed by the fact that we don't, if we were only to do, if that manual mode were activated, you wouldn't have those intermediate results popping up. So several things we could clean up. It's more evident on large volume records. When you've got 100 records in the table, it's all unnoticeable, right? But when the record count gets way up, that's a thing. So beyond that, let's see, feature requests, where did that go? So that was just one that came in this week. We had another one about having barcode actions use QR, which I haven't had a chance to look at that one at all yet. And let's see, are these by? Yeah, so these, I don't know, maybe these are in order by when they were submitted. So going back.
Originally, it's sorted by the most recent entry at the top. Otherwise, you
Yep.
can click sort by votes.
Yep. So we are in the process of taking a look at what we can accomplish here in our next release. And so I am pitching these to the product team, the ones that had the most number of votes from previous times. And so I'll just say, make sure that you vote. If you have a minute, get out to our feature requests, take a look at things that are out there, and if they're important to you, add your vote to the stack.
Just on the QR code, that one bit me, because I was going around telling people we could do the QR codes because the plugin lets you, I think it lets you read them but not generate them. And I'd misread that and thought I could generate them. So I was going around people saying, oh yes, we can do QR codes. We can set those up. People can have QR codes until someone said, yes, we would like that. And then realized it wasn't there. So I voted for it and asked for it.
Good.
But we actually, we actually used a third-party service to generate the codes using an API request and just suck down the images. But no, that I hadn't seen that one come in, but that was dear to my heart.
I've demonstrated some QR type applications, applications that took advantage of QR, not necessarily this obviously this feature that's not in there yet. But I did the same thing, is my point, on generating. There's a quite simple API call that you can use, and I've demonstrated that. I could help you find it if you need it. But yeah, generate them and display them as an image very quite easily, and freeware. So I say freeware, I mean it's seems to be a free and unrestricted API to generate those. So cool. All right. But yes, take advantage of that both for voting and if there's things that are missing in the product, we do definitely look at those and discuss them. Sometimes around the campfire, we talk about ghost stories. These are things that, scary stories, things that you got into that took you too long to figure out or that you're still struggling with. And hopefully they come with a happy ending. So just wondering if anybody has any ghost stories today. While you're giving that some thought, there's this other, just right at the edge of the firelight from the campfire, there's dark corners, places where you've been exploring that are in the product that we haven't talked about in a while. Just wonder if anybody has gotten off into some dark corner of the product that you thought was interesting or scary, or how far can I stretch this metaphor, right? And anything else? Your 4th of July plans. All right. Well, you guys are quiet today. If you're not going to have new topics, I'm going to move to our afterglow segment. So this I guess would be last call. Anything else that you have going on that you want to talk about today? All right, so I'm going to do that. This last call, excuse me, this is Happy Low Coding. Thank you guys for showing up to the Low Code Campfire for this Friday, July 1st. I hope you guys have a great 4th of July if you celebrate that. And if you don't, I hope you have a good 4th of July anyway. We will see you next week, this same hour, for another episode of Low Code Campfire. Thanks.